Everybody knows that the protagonist, Kafka Hibino, is 32 years old when he joins the Defense Force, an unusually late start for a shonen protagonist. But did you know it mirrors the mangaka's own career? You see, Matsumoto Sensei has been a manga artist for nearly 2 decades. He won the 22nd Jump 12 Newcomer Manga Award back in 2005 with a manga called Spiritual People, and also the 27th one with Neko Romancer. Next, in 2009, his manga called Neko Wappa was published in Weekly Shonen Jump, only 2 volumes by the way. Then, in 2013, his next manga, Pochikuro, was published in Shonen Jump Next and was serialized for about a year. The point is, it wasn't until Kaiju No. 8's serialization in 2020 that the author finally had his big break, which, makes him pretty similar to Kafka Hibino, who also joined the Defense Force late in comparison to his peers. In his own words, Matsumoto Sensei said, "There's a large part where I projected myself into the story. At the time, I couldn't make a living from my manga either, so I was earning a living in a place that was close to my dream but far away. Every time I saw my manga friend doing well in magazines, I had mixed feelings and wondered, why am I on this side? I think that Hibino Kafka was born naturally from within me." Moving on, both the 3rd and the 1st Division are based in Tokyo. And because they're both based in Tokyo, they share a rivalry since people constantly compare them. The 3rd Division's logo was designed with Japanese themes in mind, like a family crest, while the 1st Division logo was designed with the idea of being the strongest sword of the Defense Force. Also, the platoon leaders in the 1st Division dye their hair as a sign of respect towards Captain Narumi's strength. By the way, did you catch the Kaiju No. 8 Easter egg in Dandadan? In Chapter 56 of Dandadan, Momo Ayase is shown reading the 1st volume of Kaiju No. 8. Editor Nakaji mentioned that the author specifically designed the page layouts to make them easy to follow on smartphones, because the manga's release started off digitally. To add to this, go and check out Chapter 2 on Manga Plus. You'll notice there's a panel completely in color. Well, it's because the manga started off digitally that the manga artist can surprise you with completely colored manga panels in the official release. Matsumoto Sensei mentioned that he was heavily inspired by tokusatsu heroes, like for example, Kamen Rider is a tokusatsu hero. And when it comes to these heroes, there's this idea of gaining power but also bearing an inner struggle. That's why the protagonist becomes a kaiju, and it's also why Kafka Hibino starts off with a midlife crisis. Kaiju No. 8's design was inspired by Oni and skulls in order to make it both terrifying and cool. So much so that you can't tell if he's a good guy coming in to save you or a monstrosity that you're supposed to fear. As for when it comes to the kaijus as a whole, they're treated like natural disasters. Just like earthquakes or typhoons, their threat is made to feel inevitable. Even their strength is measured with real-world disaster units called fortitude levels. Adding on to this, the kaiju numbers and codes were suggested by a coworker. He suggested that numbering them like typhoons would make them feel like natural disasters. The designs themselves are a mix of mythology and sci-fi. For example, Kaiju No. 8 was modeled after the Japanese Oni, and his glowing colors were inspired by the film Tron. This brings us to Matsumoto's golden rule. He has a rule that says, only 1 lie per story. For Kaiju No. 8, that one lie is simply that kaiju exist, but everything else in the story is grounded in the Japan you and I know today, down to the shopping streets and the swords. The author mentioned that the 1st chapter was deliberately structured to hook readers by showing a formidable kaiju first, then explaining the world. The kaiju form of Kafka is what the author struggles with the most when it comes to drawing. Basically, he loves sketching hand-to-hand fighters like Hoshina or Kikoru. But Kaiju No. 8 himself eats up his drawing hours. Matsumoto Sensei personally mentioned his favorite scene in the 5th anniversary celebration interview. It was when Kafka encouraged Kikoru in Chapter 7. He cried while drawing it. Now, the author has worked as an assistant on some other cool titles, like Siren and Shinsetsu Bobobobobobobo. As for his own team, the author worked with a team of 3 assistants for Kaiju No. 8. Osamu Koiwai drafts the backgrounds from Matsumoto's storyboards, and once he gets the approval, he completes the final art. This takes about 3 to 4 days, and you can actually check it out on YouTube. As for the other 2, Mantohihi Binta helps out with the weapon designs, while Jiro Sakura does the finishing work on the art. Next, did you know that Kafka quit cigarettes before joining the Defense Force? Also, Kafka in his Kaiju No. 8 form can pee from his nipples. Kafka's name is inspired by the author of The Metamorphosis, Franz Kafka. And by the way, the protagonist of the book, Gregor Samsa, is suddenly turned into a giant insect, and he struggles to live in his new form. That's basically what happens to Kafka when he turns into a kaiju. To add to this, there's another parallel. Both Kafka and the protagonist of The Metamorphosis find out about their new forms while trying to get up from bed. Also, Kafka not only has the highest recordable kaiju fortitude level at 9.8, but he ironically also had the lowest percentage of release power as a Defense Force officer at just 1%. I mean, in Chapter 5, it's just 0%, but it increases to 1% by Chapter 11. As it turns out, Reno joined Monster Sweeper Inc. by mistake because he thought the aptitude test to join the Defense Force was going to be a kaiju disposal. Next, according to the author, the combat suit used by the Defense Force was originally designed to suit Mina. When he came up with the design, it was only supposed to be for Mina's suit, but he decided to make it the standard combat suit design of the Defense Force. And speaking of Mina, she loves cats. Any kind of feline, really. She was even the caretaker of animals when she was in elementary school, and now owns a gray tiger named Bako, which she brings with her to fight kaijus. Bako is actually a failed kaiju that takes the form of a tiger. He's also the first named animal introduced in the series. Kikoru, on the other hand, loves big dogs. Her personal weapon was supposed to be a giant sword, but the author decided an axe would be a higher contrast between the rugged weapon and her character. When you think about it, this is the opposite of how Eiichiro Oda initially wanted Nami's weapon to be an axe. Her Daruma dropper technique is inspired by a Japanese children's game called Daruma Otoshi. It's played by hitting a Daruma doll in 5 pieces with a hammer without making it fall. And what do you know? Kikoru's technique, in fact, cuts the target in 5 pieces from head to legs, just like the dolls. And despite only being a regular officer, Kikoru's unleashed combat power of 94% is the highest out of any non-captain ranked officer. She's also the only known soldier who's compatible with 4 numbered weapons. Numbers Weapon 4 is currently the only numbers weapon worn by more than one person. Now, as it's revealed in Chapter 129, the final chapter, Kikoru becomes the vice captain of the 1st Division in her 2nd year as a defense officer. And by the way, there's a very common misconception amongst the fandom that Kikoru is 16, because it was mentioned in Chapter 4 that she's graduated college at that age. However, we gotta keep in mind that the manga follows real-life military rules very closely. That's why it's impossible for Kikoru to be younger than 18. Again, just because she's the Director General's daughter doesn't mean she'll be able to get into the military before turning 18. Also, to add to how the manga follows real-life Japanese military rules, we know that only people under 33 can participate in the selection exam. But did you know the military age limit being raised to 32 was an actual event in Japan? Also, we know that Kikoru can't drink, right? Well, the Viz's translation of Kikoru's reason for being unable to drink alcohol was translated as, "It's because she's a minor," but that's not exactly accurate. A more accurate translation would have been that she's underage, since the drinking age in Japan is 20. The light novel titled Exclusive on the 3rd Division calls Kikoru the youngest of the new recruits. Female members joining the Defense Force wasn't the norm until Kikoru's mother, Hikari Shinomiya, joined. Yeah, that's when the Defense Force saw a rising number of female officers enrolling. Now it's clear that Kikoru's family is quite influential. But did you know that Haruichi Izumo, who is also in the 3rd Division with our gang, is worth more than Kikoru's family? His family owns Izumo Tech, the largest anti-kaiju weapon maker company. That's how they have significantly more wealth than the Shinomiya family. Next, the Defense Force's name and winged logo is based on the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps from the movie Pacific Rim. The most commonly seen weapons carried by the Defense Force are reminiscent of real-world firearms. In an illustration from France, the author states that he discussed the French equivalent of the Defense Force with a worker at Kaze, which is a French publishing company. Now, according to 4th Division Captain Jugo Ogata, numbers weapons augment the user's desire and instinctive nature. And we see this happen multiple times throughout the story. For example, Isao's deepest desire was to secure his daughter Kikoru's future. And so, his numbers weapon 2 amplified that drive so much that he gave his life fighting Kaiju number 9. Kikoru herself, on the other hand, had the desire to escape her late mother's shadow. That's why when she equipped numbers 4, that desire sharpened into a power boost so she could surpass her mother's ghost. Then there's Reno. With numbers weapon 6, his desire to prove himself and to protect his comrades went Super Saiyan when he locked in and defeated Mold Type 67 Honju on his own. There's also Hoshina. He wanted to prove himself against his older brother, which is why with numbers weapon 10, he was able to redesign his fighting style. And then you have Gen Narumi. Even though he's introduced as the strongest in the Defense Force, he knew that he was still only as strong as his old master, Prime Iseo. Deep down, he wanted to surpass his old master, and so when he wielded numbers 1 against Kaiju number 11, that desire helped him boost his strength to the point where he could take down Kaiju number 11 by himself. Still, speaking of Narumi, he's implied to be younger than Mina because he was still a student when she graduated from high school. The gap is just half a year though. I mean, Mina's birthday is in June, while Gen's birthday is in December. Narumi is extremely into gaming, as we know. He owns a BS5, which is like a PlayStation 5, but Hoshina is actually better at video games than him. When Matsumoto Sensei was designing Hoshina's swords, he was conflicted as to if he wanted a combat sword or a ninja sword for him. That's just because he loves drawing him. As Hoshina gradually masters numbers weapon 10, his maximum unleashed combat power reaches 100% in Chapter 92, which is very obviously the highest in the entire series. Next, Juzo no Gisaka mentioned in chapter 33 that there's a country that's experimenting with kaiju to human tissue transplants, but we never got any confirmation on which country he was talking about. As for the origin of kaiju themselves, it was theorized in chapter 58 that they're born from the immense energy produced by the faults in the earth. And then, finally, in chapter 118, this was elaborated when it was revealed that the mysterious larva was born from the dragon veins deep within the earth after the hearts of warriors formed a core. That explanation is actually really similar to the problem with the alchemy in Fullmetal Alchemist, and how it's the faults in the earth that makes it different from Shing's alchemy. The larva kaiju is actually the first one in the series who displayed the ability to talk. I mean, it talked before entering Kafka's body. The way this kaiju appears in Kafka Hibino's mind is similar to how weaponized identified kaiju can be seen by numbers weapons users. Plus, after its origins were revealed, Kafka can even see the memories of the fallen kaiju slayers from the Maireki era, which is similar to how Kikoru saw her memories with her mother through her weapon. Now let's talk about kaiju number 6. With a fortitude level of 9.6, he's got the second highest known level in the entire series, second only to kaiju number 8. This guy's literally called the King of Kaiju, which is a clear reference to Godzilla's title as the King of the Monsters. In fact, his design, from his overall build to his spine, is also super similar to several different Godzilla iterations, such as Shin Godzilla and -1 Godzilla. Matsumoto Sensei actually designed Numbers Weapon 1 and Numbers Weapon 10 to look opposite to each other, just like their users, Naromi and Hoshina. Which is why, while Weapon 1 has more volume on the upper body, Weapon 10 emphasizes the lower body. Kaiju number 10 was created with the concept of a character who loves fighting, like Goku from Dragon Ball for example. The authors mention that he loves the kind of characters who love fighting. Plus, like basically every other shonen author, Dragon Ball is the manga that inspired him. Number 10 is the first kaiju in history to willingly ask to be weaponized, which also makes it the first ever case of a sentient weapon. After being weaponized, Number 10's relationship with Hoshina is really similar to Marvel's Venom and his host, Eddie Brock. I mean, both Hoshina and Eddie have to share their bodies with a highly violent creature. Kaiju number 9's appearance is actually reminiscent of an oyster mushroom, and his head looks like a silk hat. But the deeper connection is to Slattern, a kaiju from the movie Pacific Rim. They both have similar hammerhead-like heads, multiple eyes, and act as alpha specimens among their fellow kaiju. Kaiju number 11 was created based on the concept of a fish. Since its ability would be weak on land, the author came up with the idea of number 11 using water from sewage systems when fighting. And Kaiju number 12 was modeled to look like an improved version of Kaiju number 10. No wonder Soichiro, Hoshina's older brother, is compatible with Kaiju number 12. It's revealed at the end of the story in chapter 129 though, so who knows if it'll actually be turned into a numbers weapon. Next, the concept behind Kaiju number 13 is that of an urban yokai in Japanese folklore, specifically those that run at high speeds on highways. Turbo Granny? Is that you? Also, Kaiju number 13 has the third highest known fortitude level at 9.2, only behind number 6 and number 8. But keep in mind that two kaiju have immeasurable fortitude levels. Both the evolved form of Kaiju number 8 and the Daikaiju of the Maireki era have fortitude levels that just can't be measured. By the way, the evolved form of Kaiju number 8 is said to be neither human nor kaiju. Therefore, its fortitude level can't be classified under ID Kaiju fortitude levels. And when it comes to the Daikaiju of the Maireki era, as it turns out, there's a fire incident that happened in 1657 that burned roughly 70% of the greater Tokyo region. And so when it comes to the Kaiju number 8 verse, this Daikaiju is the one responsible for that historical incident. The reason why Kaiju number 15 is similar to Kikoru is because of Kaiju number 9's ability to gain the memories of the humans it's absorbed. Basically, number 9 used the memories of Iseo to create a kaiju identical to Kikoru. The author clearly thought this all out to get the maximum amount of character drama from Kikoru. And a testament to that is that Kaiju number 15 is the only character to be featured on a volume back cover, which happened on volume 10. Volume 10 is also the first one to feature a kaiju other than Kafka's Kaiju number 8 on the cover. And for a quick stat check, only 15 Daikaiju were ever given official ID numbers up until the end of the story. Daikaiju of the Maireki is not a part of these because the Defense Force and the ID system wasn't a thing when it appeared. It was the age of the samurai. But as we already know, a great number of them perished in the battle against the Daikaiju. However, their hatred of the kaiju led to the birth of the larva that eventually found a compatible host in Kafka Hibino. While the larva is a parasite born from the amalgamation of dead samurai and warriors who fell to the Daikaiju of the Maireki era, the larva's core specifically was born from the heart of the samurai who looked exactly like Kafka. Which is why, centuries later, when the larva came across Kafka, it said, "I found you." The fortitude level of Philinosoma was changed in the anime. It was 6 in the manga, but the anime adaptation changed it to 3.5 for some reason. And did you know that the one kaiju number 8 brought in as character designer is none other than the legendary animator Tetsuya Nishio? For those who know, he's a legend. In 2009, he was awarded the Best Character Design Award at the 8th Tokyo Anime Awards for his outstanding work on Skycrawlers. And today, he's known as one of the 3 gods of IG along with Kisei Kazuchika and Okiura Hiroyuki. Producer Masashi Ohira picked him specifically because Nishio's style, while less detailed, makes the animation super fluid and gives it a 3D feel. But Nishio wasn't the only big name. Mahiro Maeda, the chief kaiju designer, is the man behind the kaiju anatomy. He gave the battle scene sketches that raw, detailed realism fans love. As for the vibe itself, it was Shinji Kimura as art director, so that he can bring out a realistic, grounded setting that feels just right. This is why producer Katsuhiro Takai said the anime adaptation kind of reminded him of older anime, how the slice-of-life character focus feels like pat labor, and while the apocalyptic setting is like Neon Genesis Evangelion. All in all, Kaiju number 8 has been one of the crown jewels of Shonen Jump Plus. According to the deputy editor-in-chief of Shonen Jump Plus, Yuta Momoyama, in October 2020, Kaiju number 8 has been on par with Spy Family in terms of popularity. And sure enough, the growth was explosive. I mean, within half a year since the first chapter's release in 2020, it hit 30 million views. It's the fastest Jump Plus manga to ever do so. And within just 28 days, it was officially the best-selling new manga of 2020. It's also the fastest Jump Plus manga to cross the million mark. And this hype wasn't just limited to Japan either, because believe it or not, for Kaiju number 8, France saw the best launch for any manga ever in its first week. In Italy, Volume 1 even printed more copies than Demon Slayer's average print run. And fans also wanted the anime adaptation so much that back in 2022, Kaiju number 8 ranked 10th on Anime Japan's Most Wanted Anime Adaptation poll. Also, editor Nakaji revealed that an alternate version of the story was considered at first, one where Kafka just hides his kaiju identity forever. That would have been pretty cool, actually. After Kaiju number 8 started serialization in July 2020, they adopted a schedule where they publish a new chapter every week for 3 weeks, followed by a 1-week break. That was the schedule for almost a year. In Chapter 72, the way Kikoru kills the first kaiju at the National Diet Building perfectly mimics the way Narumi killed the ant-type kaiju way back in Chapter 41. In the next chapter, while arguing with kaiju number 10, Hoshina calls him Pyonkichi, who's a character from the manga The Gutsy Frog. And have you ever noticed how Konomi Okonogi, the operations leader of the 3rd Division, looks like the only one wearing a uniform that doesn't quite fit? Well, that's because when she enlisted, she genuinely thought she would still grow in size. And while the Defense Force has plenty of beauties, Akari Minase is the only one who's actually been confirmed to have multiple secret admirers in the Defense Force. And speaking of admiration, Jura Igarashi, the captain of the 2nd Division, has so much admiration for Mina that she suggested her younger sister, Aqua, join Mina's 3rd Division instead of her own 2nd Division. When it comes to admirable women in the Defense Force, Hikaru's mother, Hikari Shinomiya, had a kaiju kill count that far surpassed any of the previous Defense Force captains. Now, I may have accidentally skipped over your favorite little detail, much like how Matsumoto Sensei completely skipped over any actual romance progression between Mina and Kafka, even at the end. Anyways, if you like diving deep into Kaiju number 8, then you're absolutely gonna love my other 108 Facts videos. Go check out the videos on Dandadan, Demon Slayer, Tower of God, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Attack on Titan. So, which series should I do next? Comment down below.